Why do you want to help me? I pulled myself onto my feet and swayed like a drunken beggar, trudging through the alleys till I could feel the cold air coming off the river. I made my way to the bridge where Nick and I had taken the boat to Greenwich. Little pinprick reflections of candlelight in the houses and shops gleamed like eyes on the water. I sat on the river steps, folding my arms tight across my chest to try to hold in the pain. It was bitterly cold. I kept thinking about Nick. He was just an ordinary boy, but he'd shown me more kindness than any other boy I'd ever met. In the court, all the boys were jealous of each other. Nobody trusted anyone else. At home at Montague Hall, the only boys I knew were servants and the children of servants. My father had always treated them like members of the family. Yet sometimes, with Nick, I even forgot that he was a commoner. I needed him to look after me, he was right. But I needed him for something more than that, something deeper, and I couldn't understand what it was. It was almost like the way I needed my father, needed my sister. It was almost like the way I needed Matthew. There was no way Nick would have sent someone to do this to me or myself. Not Nick. But if it wasn't Nick or someone from his family, who could it have been? The receding tide had dragged itself away from the steps, leaving the stinking rubbish of the city behind, rotten pulpy fruit and vegetables settling into the mud. In the moonlight, the bones of a dead donkey emerged from the slime. Its face was set in a hideous smile. What can I do? What can I do now? I moaned aloud. And still the donkey grinned. And I couldn't move, not even to drag myself away from its stench. It was there that Nick found me, hours later. It was day by then, tide coming back in, icy water lapping around my ankles. I heard feet pattering down the steps and felt someone squatting next to me. I could hear the grin in his voice as he spoke. You're a slippery fish, sir, and no mistake. I was following you and you just went and disappeared clean out of my sight. Lost him, I said to myself. Lost him good and proper now. And I hunted round all the nooks and crannies. No, Master William. I was worried, I tell you. Then I followed my feet down here, and here you are, sitting like a sleeping duck with your head tucked into your belly. And so I must warn you, you shouldn't be here. This is a dangerous place at night. You should never come here without Nick to look after you. I uncurled myself and lifted my head to look at him. He clapped his hand across his mouth. Who did that to you? I'm too late, aren't I? You've been set upon, and I should have been there to protect you. Your face is as black and blue as starling's wings, sir. You've been kicked and battered and in no end of trouble. And where was I? Nowhere to be seen. That's where I was. Who did it to you? I don't know, I groaned. You can't do anything without me, sir. Remember that. Trust me. I won't let you down. I couldn't look at him. Did he know how many times I doubted him? Why do you want to help me, Nick? I'm just a danger to you. You know that now. I told you, I like adventures. Besides, we're all right, aren't we? If I was in trouble, you'd help me, wouldn't you? I tugged at the fastening on my boot. When had I ever helped anyone? Nick prattled on as if he hadn't even noted that I hesitated. A gentleman needs someone to look after him, like a sheep needs a shepherd, like I need my guardian angel. He crossed himself quickly and glanced upwards, expecting to see his angel there, wings spread out over his head like a tent in a storm. I think my guardian angel was with me last night. I told Nick about the rescue who had come out of nowhere. I don't know who it was, but he saved my life and chased away my attacker. He didn't have wings yet. You sure it wasn't another robber, sir? They work in pairs often enough, like dogs in a pack. Only that second one saw that fine ring and thought, I'll have that myself. And he ran away after the first scoundrel and stole it off him. I don't know, I admitted. I don't know anything. The one thing I did know was that my father's ring had gone. Who would believe my story now without it? And I had no idea whether my father was still alive. I groaned and covered my face with my hands, and the pain inside me was worse, much worse than the pain I'd got from the attacker's foot on my face and my chest. Oh, Lord, don't do that. Don't, Master Will, Nick said. I'm here. You're not all on your own, and you never will be. I didn't answer him. There's nothing you could do to help me now. Isn't there anyone left in England you can go to? I shook my head. I could feel the prickle of tears in my eyes, and I clenched my fists together. I had no idea where my Aunt Carrie was now, but it was obvious that she could do nothing to save my father. Her own husband was the one who had caused him to be sent to prison, and she wouldn't do anything against Uncle Caro. The only friends of my father that I knew of were staunch followers of the Pope. Most probably they were in jail themselves by now, like Lord de Cressy, or hanged. And if they weren't, there was nothing they could do or say to help him, even if they dared. There was no one in the world who loved and cared about him as much as I did. Except my sister. There's Marjorie, I said, sitting up. But she's miles away, and she's married to one of the king's friends, a real nobleman in France. France? Nick's eyes widened. Where's that? It's over the sea. I was full of despair. France. It might as well have been the moon. At the thought of the sea came lurching wet and dark at me, drenching me in fear. I sank my muzzy head down to my knees again. So we can do it. We'll find a way. I'll be a sailor man at last. I'll ride the tides like a rich man rides a horse. I'll go to lands where the sun burns down all day and the other lands where the ice is as thick as castle walls, and I'll see the great monster fish. I had to smile at him, even though it hurt my face to do it. You ninny, Nick. France is only a few hours sailing time away. Then there's nothing to stop us, nothing at all. You aren't thinking straight, that's your trouble. Come home with me first, and Grandma will mend your bruises with herbs, and when you're better, we'll go there. We'll sail to France. We can do it. He helped me to my feet, but I found I couldn't walk. He half carried me up the steps and set me down so we could both get our breath back. My head was spinning with dizziness, and the moment he opened up wounds and set me bleeding again, I was shivering uncontrollably by then. You're feverish, sir, Nick said. Let's get you home. Home. It was a good word to me that day, even though my fuzzy brain knew that he didn't mean the ancient golden walls of Montague Hall, nor my prince's red brick palace at Hampton Court. They would never bring home to me again. Neither of them. Home was a simple timber and mud cottage with a sagging thatch roof, and if I got there last night, none of this would have happened. I needed to lean on Nick at first because the robber had kicked my shins so hard that they had stiffened up while I slept on the cold river steps. But after a bit, I wanted to walk on my own, and Nick let me. He kept glancing at me anxiously. I grinned at him to show him I was all right, but I felt strange, dizzy, and cold. So cold. Widow Susan tutted and fussed over me as if I were a child of her own family. She took some bunches of lavender that were hanging to dry in front of the window sit and set to the grinding them with a stone and stepping them into oil. Meg drew fresh water from the well and warmed it a little over the fire so it wouldn't shock me too much, and gently bathed my face. Sarah Dietney sat with baby Arthur at her breast, staring at me and gritting her teeth every time I winced. Then Widow Susan dabbed on the lavender oil, and though it stung, I managed to keep my mouth shut. She sent Meg to fetch more water so she could bathe my shins, and tutting and hissing between her gums, she rolled up my head and eased the blood-clogged cloth away from the wounds. I must go to France, I murmured. It was all I could say. My teeth chattered like stones in a riverbed. You won't be fit to go anywhere yet, the grandmother scolded. That villain nearly killed you, and I don't want him to kill you again. Not today, at least. I want you to lie down and get warm because you keep shivering as if you want to take your skin off your bones, and I don't like that. You won't go up the ladder. You'll open up all those sores if you try climbing. Take my mattress by the fire and I'll get some good barley broth going for you. If anyone can get you well, old Susan can, but you must stay calm and warm for the next 2 days. She shuffled me over towards the fire, and I was feeling dizzy by then. Couldn't stop shivering. I let her lower me back down onto the straw and cover me with her rough blanket. I could feel myself fighting against the cold surge of the sea. I was rising and falling, grasping blindly at nothing, choking as my mouth filled with water. I was heaved into the air and felt the heavy drench of water dragging me down and down. I was heaved up again. I heard my father's voice calling, Matthew, Matthew. I tried to speak, but my mouth full of water. It's not Matthew, it's William. Then someone stroked my brow with something warm and sweet-smelling. I was home. The fields golden with corn and dancing with poppies and daisies. I could hear the skylark churning and churning her silver song. I tried to open my eyes, but my lids were heavy, so heavy. And at last the sweet herbs and the purring fire soothed me into a long, deep sleep.